moved over in the fall of 2023. I signed up for a marathon just out of the blue, really. Did that in 424, kind of out of the blue, and kind of had kept that going and have a current PB of 242.
Are you running a marathon? Oh, I could never run a marathon.
Sure about that? A marathon is like 42 kilometers, 26 miles. I don't understand those people.
That used to be me, but not anymore. Welcome to the Marathon Podcast. My name is Kristian Warwick. Warwick runs on Instagram, YouTube. If you are new to the podcast, thank you so much for tuning in. If you've been here before, I appreciate you tuning back into the Marathon Podcast. And the pod is constantly growing on all platforms. But one platform that I started on pretty recently was YouTube. And I would really appreciate if you would head over there to subscribe to the channel. That would help me a lot in terms of just going full time on this podcast. I'm starting to feel like it's hard to combine this podcast, all my training and my business. So it would be nice if I could justify it even more. And if you want to help me do that, one of the things you can do is head over to the Marathon Podcast on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. In today's episode, we're having Odin Strømberg with us. He's a Norwegian. We have a lot of things in common. One of them is that we started running the same year, but a big difference is that I've not had even close to the progression that Odin's had, because he started running, like I said, in 2023. He did a 424 marathon. He's now a 242 marathoner. He's been self-coached throughout the whole journey, and it's been just incredible to hear how he got there. I am very impressed by his mileage, but I'm also impressed by how he figured out running, how he's combining that with being a dad, being a full-time employee at a Norwegian company based in Brooklyn at the moment. And also, I found it to be even more impressive that he doesn't really have an athletic background. He's Norwegian, so in our culture, we do a lot of sports growing up, but he never really pursued that more than anyone else. So that was very impressive. I also talked to him about his goals for 2026, where he is aiming at, or he's planning to do all the US major marathons. And he also has a fundraiser for that. So we'll link that down below and you'll hear more about it in our conversation. Before we dive into the conversation, I'll just again like to update you a little bit on my own training and a little bit on what you can expect from the Marathon Podcast in the upcoming week. So first of all, my training is going well. Since the last time I've had a long run, did 30K, 19 miles, felt really good on that run. It's nice to start feeling like I'm actually having some of these pretty long runs with 11 weeks to go to Boston and much less than that to Tokyo. It's less than a month left now. And other than that, it's good. I know that John is planning for me to do a harder long run next week, so that will be interesting. This is probably going to be one of my highest mileage weeks ever, just because I did my long run on Monday and I'll probably do another one on Sunday. So I was looking the other day, I had 122K for the last 7 days. I realized that I tend to just look at Monday to Sunday, but obviously that's not always the highest mileage in terms of the last 7 days. So happy with the progress, happy with how things are going, and just trying to stay smart and healthy going forward. Tomorrow I am leaving for a cabin trip, and it's going to be super, super cold. So hopefully that won't interfere with my running. Curious to see how it's going to be running where I'm going, because I'm not sure if I've ever done any runs in that cold of temperatures. As for the podcast in the upcoming week, the next episode will be another one in the Boston series, where I will again answer some of you guys' questions. I will give you some like advice, I guess, from some of the previous runners that have been on the pod. So we will just re-listen to some of those. So if you haven't listened to all the episodes with previous Boston Marathon runners of different levels, that will definitely be an episode to look out for and listen to. And then just plan to have a chat with Jess McLean, and she was the best U.S. woman in the Boston elite field last year. So very excited to talk to her again and hear what she thinks about the Boston Marathon. Other than that, I'm really hoping that I can just keep doing what I'm doing. Like I said, it's getting a bit harder to combine all of this, but I'll do my best to try to keep up 3 episodes a week. And again, the best way you can support me and make it easier for me to keep this up is to follow the podcast on all platforms and give it a review, and maybe most importantly, share it with a friend. And with that, I think we should just jump to the conversation with Odin. And I really hope that you will benefit from listening to this. At least I found it to be very inspiring. Yes. Okay. I actually have a fellow Norwegian with me today. Odin, welcome to the Marathon Podcast. Where are you right now?
Thank you, Kristian. I'm in Brooklyn, New York. So as you say, I am from Norway, but have lived here for 2-3 years now.
Awesome. And then we connected because you're also a runner. Will you just present yourself a little bit about who Odin is, but also about your running journey?
Of course. Yeah, my name is Odin Stromberg. As you said, Norwegian, 28 years old. I moved to the US summer of 2023. Didn't really have any significant running background at the time. Figured it was a good way to do some sightseeing. So I started, carefully running around the streets here of New York. Really loved it. And since then, I guess 2.5 years, I've got more and more into it. The marathon specifically, tried to kind of follow a general process, a fall marathon, a spring marathon, etc. So yeah, where I'm right now, I'll be lining up for an exciting 2026. Going into the 3 US majors. So I think we'll speak a bit about that today, but also kind of how we got there. And yeah, on a personal note, I live here with my wife and a 1-year-old daughter. So I had good backing at home for all the running. Yeah, very much enjoy the US. Bit of a change from Norway, of course, but no, enjoying it.
Awesome. And what you didn't mention here, as the one thing that you wrote to me when we were texting, was this incredible progress that you've had since you started your running project a couple of years ago.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. So I think after I'd moved over in the fall of 2023, I signed up for a marathon just out of the blue. Really, at that point I'd done like a couple of I call them sightseeing trips. Run around Manhattan, stop for a bagel. You just stay out on your feet for like 3 to 4 hours. I think I did a couple of those up to like 30K. Decided to sign up for a marathon. Did that in 4:24, kind of out of the blue, and kind of had kept that going and have a current PB of 2:42. So it's don't know what that exactly is, but a significant increase at least.
Yeah, I think that, first of all, what is intriguing here is that you were saying that you were just running around New York, bagels, ended up at 30K, like 19 miles. And you're talking about that as if that is like a casual thing. Is that like, because you did say that you didn't have a running background, but when I hear this, I'm like, well, it sounds like you have some kind of athletic background. Where did you come from?
That's fair. So nothing kind of specific. You run every now and then. I guess I have done, not at kind of the high level at all, but I've done some cross country skiing, as you would when I lived in Norway. So in kind of the spring of 2023, I did some races there. Just, I don't know, for those familiar from Norway, we have I guess southwestern version of Birkebein. Like it's called Seselomi. That's like what is that, 52 kilometer race. So that's been like the one I done that every year, just for fun. Really, no no real ambition, but I did try to take it a bit more serious. So I guess that was my first meeting with kind of a structured approach to training. But I think the way that translates into running is probably just you're out for a long period of time, right? Whether that's hiking or skiing, you're used to staying out for maybe up to 5 hours. So I think I'm maybe taking parts of that into running. So although kind of the paces at the time were, I don't even know what it was because I wasn't paying attention to it, but probably up to like 9 million miles, etc. But so I kind of do that, and it was a good way when I moved to the city. Want to see the west side one day, so just ran along it. Then you cross over to the east side. Also had plenty of time in Central Park, which I lived relatively close to at the time. So that was a great introduction, to be honest. It's packed with runners, packed with bikers. Yeah, the perfect place to start, really.
Yeah, and speaking of like starting, I'm still kind of just I don't know. When I hear about people doing their first marathon and they're talking about, I did, what was it that you did, 420 or was it
424? Yeah.
424? And first of all, like after I started this podcast, it's kind of just become more and more clear to me that we need to kind of emphasize the fact that running a marathon in the first place is very impressive. And so you're doing that, and I'm sure you were very happy. People were probably like, "Oh my God, did you do a marathon?" And then fast forward like 2 years later, you're running a 2:42 marathon, which is like a completely different thing. You're running almost 2 hours or closer to 2 hours faster. Uh, what Before you tell us how you got there, like what does that feel like for you? Going from that, I'm gonna run to the west side, to the east side, blah blah blah, and then now being a 2:42 marathoner.
I think I kind of agree with you as well. I didn't really, uh, how you say, I didn't really think of the times as much at the time. It was the finish part of it. I just wanted to have done it at some point, and now I view it as kind of complete two different sports, really, right? The first one is just on your feet. You're able to actually finish, complete the distance. At this point, you're much more concerned about times. When you speak to people about the sport in general, you're interested in not just a marathon. What's your half, what's your 10K, etc. So just a much more, I don't know, wider understanding of the sport as a whole, as opposed to what you had at first, right? Because at that point, it's just finishing the races. But
Yeah,
still,
because
I would still give credit to both. Both ends of the spectrum are important. And that's actually a thing about U.S. culture that I did notice. The whole finisher aspect of it. You see the T-shirt. It's
hmm
not necessarily that many questions. What was your times more? You did a marathon? Cool. Did you finish? Yeah, great. Kudos to you.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
maybe a bit of a different shift, at least coming at it from Norway.
Yeah, because I think that is maybe important for us as Norwegians now to establish in this episode that for us coming from Norway, we are like, especially now we're approaching the Winter Olympics, and in lot of winter sports, Norwegians will actually be disappointed if you don't win, Like even a medal sometimes might be disappointing if you don't win a gold because we're so used to that. And I'm not saying that in running that Norway has or Norway doesn't have a better history with running than the US, but I think that we need to be a bit better at just applauding the fact that you're finishing, right? Like we're maybe a too bad. Maybe we're too obsessed with results. I don't know what your thoughts are.
No, to be honest, I agree 100%. And it's a good part of the culture here, and I guess it makes it a tad more inclusive as well, right? We can just look at that and kind of where I work as well. We have after a while, we've established a bit of a running group in the office, etc. And we probably cover times from 120 to 230 and a half, but that's all good. We can still go out and have the run together after work once a week. No issue.
But still, like I want to talk a bit more about that. Um, that 424 to 242 because I'm not gonna do any public math here. Maybe you remember what your average pace was for that 424
Uh,
marathon.
I it would be on the kilometer, it would be 6 something, because I remember when I started the race, I was like, oh, I might try to hold 6 minutes per K.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I started off, and I don't think I ended up there. I probably ended up at like 6:15, 6:20, something like that. I kept it for
Hmm.
some time. How do you say? I probably visited the most porta potties of all the racers that day. So it
Yeah.
went a bit slower towards the end. so 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 I don't think the pace was very high, but six and change on the kilometer, and what's that in miles? Probably 9-ish, something closer to 10. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think closer to 10. And then if we look at what you're running now, you're almost at like what we're what are we talking? We're talking 60 something maybe per mile, so like
I think it
three,
ended at on the app was like 6:13. I think in Philadelphia, the last one I
yeah,
did. Uh,
yeah. Which is crazy when you think of that. Within 2 years, you're doing a marathon that much faster per mile or per kilometer or like the whole distance. So, what is it that you've done since that fall of 2023?
to be honest, it's the boring answer, but it's consistency, to be honest. And I think, like you said from the start, I took to volume pretty in a good way, I would say. I've kind of I've walked the steps, but I've gradually increased, and in kind of especially in the latter marathon blocks, I've been able to sustain a high volume week after week. So I to be honest, that's the most important driver. But I don't think I've been, and I've probably been a bit on the cautious side. I haven't been too greedy with like interval workouts. The long run, I think I put a lot of effort into the long run at first. Make sure easy the day before, maybe easy 2 days after. So it meant I could gradually build up volume over an extended period of time. But all that is important. But at the end of the day, I haven't really had any periods where I haven't had that consistency week in, week out. So I think that helps, and so I would say that's the main driver. It's the boring answer, but when it comes down to it, it's probably the truth.
But I also think that that is something that, at least to a lot of people, it's like you said, it might sound boring, but it's also where very motivational, inspiring, because it's a pretty simple recipe, right? Like it might be boring to get out there every day and do all of that, but at least you know what to do.
Yeah,
So
no, I agree 100%.
I I also think that it's interesting to hear because it's so easy to think that when you are at a certain level, you feel like, well, how am I going to get there? Because I'm sure that when you were running that 424 marathon, if you were looking at someone doing a 242 marathon that day, that seemed pretty impossible or unrealistic on that day. And then all of a sudden you find yourself being one of them, and you've probably been able to get home and shower and spend time with your family at the time the older version of yourself actually finished.
No, I agree 100%, and not even only on the 424, but the one that came after as well. I think that was a 3:22 at the Jersey City Marathon, and I just remember passing the 255 group, and I just hear someone next to me were like, "That's our Boston qualifiers," he shouted. And I just like remember seeing those guys and thinking, that's just a different level entirely, not even close. And then
Hmm.
maybe, a few months later I'm there myself, but it's as you say, when you're at the level you're at and you view the other groups, it's just, yeah, different levels.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so take us through, before we dive into the specifics of your training and like your long runs and all of that. Take us through that journey from that first marathon, because you said you were doing like the spring marathon, the fall marathon. Is that the case? Have you been doing 2 marathons a year since you moved to the States?
Yeah, pretty much. I made one exception this fall because I didn't feel like I got everything out on the first fall, so I added an extra. But pretty much, yeah. So if you start with that fall of 23, 424, that was at Suffolk County. It's out on Long Island. Then moving into the spring of 24, that's the first time Jersey City Marathon. That was a 3:22, and from that point, that's still had I didn't really do any speed work at the time, but I was running quite a bit. So then 3:22, your next goal, it's called 2:59. So that was the next goal, quite obvious. And then I did that in the fall of 24 at the really nice race actually out in the Hamptons here. So that was also good opportunity to travel out there along the beaches. And then kind of that's more of a personal and funny thing though. But I've had a grandfather I have a grandfather that's been a great inspiration to me. That he's done like 40 plus marathons, and his family record set in like I think it's 1989 was 2:47.00. So you do 2:59, that's your next goal, right? So started working then from the 2:59 in the fall. Then in the spring, again, the Jersey City Marathon, I beat that by 30 seconds. So that's a 2:46.30. That's no matter where we go from here, that's still always going to be the biggest achievement because to me, at least at the time, that was massive. Um, and then now at that point, right, I have some structure in my training. I kind of understand the principles. So then the fall of this year, I actually did 2 races. So I did first one out up in New Hampshire called Clarence DeMar Marathon. You might be familiar with it. He's a former, he's won Boston like 10 times back in like the 1910s, 20s. So I put New Hampshire and his hometown. That's where we went. So I did a 2:45 there, which I was happy with. But I just felt that, I'd done a lot of good work between Jersey and that one. So I felt I probably should be able to improve that. I probably didn't pace it correctly. So that's why I kind of found another marathon in Philadelphia 7 weeks later, which is where I did the 2:42.
Wow. I think like when listening to this, I'm like, how is it possible to improve this much every time? And also just with a few months between all of them. So my first thought was just when when you went from that 4:24 to, was it 3:22 you said?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Uh just that improvement, because then you go from 6 something per kilometer to then doing what is that,
4:45, I think that ended up at.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it's funny though, because I'm like, as I mentioned, like at the time, no speed work. I did volume. I commuted to from work quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember the long runs because that was like my key thing for the weekend. I had a goal towards the end of that block. I wanted to run the long run at 5 minutes per k.
Mm-hmm.
That was what I was working towards. Just be able to finish a long run 5 minutes per k. And I remember I think I hit that like 4 or 5 weeks before the race. That was obviously a good feeling. And then I was able to push it down a little more than that towards the actual race. But uh, even then, I remember because I started getting more interest, right? So you start listening to some podcasts, you hear all the talk of speed work, etc. But I also had another advice, and that's, don't try anything new when you're that close to a race. So even
Mm-hmm.
though I was maybe like 6 weeks out of the race, and in hindsight, I probably could have done some intervals. but but at the time, I was like, I can't do anything new now. I just have to stick with what I'm currently doing, and then maybe for the next block, we'll try something new. So that's pretty much what I did. I just had to focus on the long run, tried to hit that 5 minute per k, 8 minute a mile on that one, and I did, and that ultimately, yeah. So that took off about an hour, which I don't think I'll see that progression ever again.
No, I doubt it. I mean, if you did, then you would be really. Then you can quit your job and go pro. But
Yeah.
um, the it must have been quite a surprise to you also, like during a workout, because that was my thought, that when you were talking about this, that so for most people you will have some progress. And so say for me now that I'm training, obviously I'm just happy if I can lower my threshold pace with like a few seconds. But for you, just within those few months, you go from, regardless of the race itself, but just in training, your fitness and your pace is improving and changing so much. And how was that in your training? Because it must also mean that you had to adjust quite a lot like mentally in terms of your perspective of your pace and running when going out?
Uh, Definitely, right? Because when you think of it, at first you're really, you're always battling like some aches and stuff. It's just you just want to go through an hour running and not have your knees hurt or not get short breath, that kind of stuff, right? And all of a sudden you're into a space where you're more focused on pace variations, etc. So the focus during the workouts becomes entirely different. You start actually looking week to week. Oh, I did the same distance, slightly faster this time. So you notice the progression very well, and I think it's very important at that time that all those kind of when you start, all those niggles were kind of gone, and that's kind of when I started enjoying it. At least that I had some knee issues the years prior, so that's always been like a thing. You start running, the knee starts running. That was all gone all of a sudden. So you can enjoy it in an entirely different way.
But how was it to just see yourself running that pace? Because like even with the goal of doing a 5 minute per kilometer or 8 minute per mile on those long runs, that's a big improvement from that marathon that you did just a few months previously. Like, what was it? How was it to, or what was it like to adjust to that? Just knowing that, oh, okay, I did a 6 minute per K marathon. Now I'm gonna do like 1 minute faster for my long runs.
No, no, I mean, and you notice it especially with the people around you. Like I mentioned at the time, I did a lot of them in Central Park, and so obviously a lot of people there. And even though kind of I wasn't hitting extremely high paces at the time, you still notice you're going faster than a lot of people around you, at least, right? So I guess that's one way you notice it, right? You start passing people. Not as many people are passing you anymore. So I guess that's one way where you see it and you start to feel a bit different. I definitely. That's just one example, though. There's probably others, but
Yeah. But did you say that like you mentioned speed work, but then you also said intervals or repeats? Did you not do any of that? Was like all of your training between the 424 and 322 just easy running, and then you had that long run?
pretty much, yeah. But I did it because at the time it was like I think I had 9 miles, so it was like 14.5 k from the office home. So
Hmm.
that kind of helped a bit, right? So you get used to being out for a long time. So I think you could argue that's kind of like at least at that level, kind of a mini long run in and of itself, right? So you do have some kind of additional there, but no, it was really the most important workout of the week was just that long run
And so everything else was like low intensity, and then the long run was where you actually pushed
where you
yourself a
pushed.
bit more on the pace.
Yes, yes, pretty much. And but I still did run quite often at the time, right? So I kept kind of getting the stimulus. So that was important, but it really was the long run. But I've reflected a bit on that kind of later, and I don't think I could have. You probably can, you always can, but I don't think I could have pushed the pace kind of the marathon time that much more using that approach. I think you can
Yeah.
get to that level, 3:30 on the full. I think that's definitely possible to do without ever thinking about an interval, to be honest. But if you
Hmm.
go beyond that, I think you need to start implementing some sort of speed into your workouts. I'm not an expert on the topic. That's just kind of
Yeah,
personal
but I
personal
still
experience.
but I still find this interesting, especially for those runners who are really wanting to improve from, say, a 5 hour marathon. And then you hear, like you said, you listen to podcasts, and it's so easy to listen to like a lot of the guests that I've had on who are professionals. And then you hear about speed work, you hear about the marginal gains that they're having or doing in their lives to become better. And then they should actually just listen to you in terms of getting from that 5 hour marathon to that 320 marathon, right? Like, and like you said, there's no guarantee. It's not like everyone can do the same thing, but it's clear that it works. And I've heard more stories about that. And honestly, my first marathon build was very much, it was more like that than the other stories that I've heard of. And I did a 252 for my first one, and it was just like all the niggles and stuff. It kind of kept me from doing harder workouts, so I just ended up having those easier runs, and that helped me to get there. But then again, I have like a very athletic background, so it's harder to compare my journey to others. But no, very interesting. So how like what was your mileage like when back then from
I I'll have to think, but I'm which field are you thinking about?
so
Where are we?
from the 424 to the 322?
Right, yeah. So
Yeah,
I think I would imagine I think I probably hit 100K weeks at
yeah,
some point during that build. I'm pretty sure. Just like if you think of it, like I did a long run on the weekend, so that's probably going to be I think the biggest one's probably like 35K at the time. You had a couple of work commutes during the week, so that's if you had two of those, then all of a sudden you're at 30, right? Because it's like 14.5K each. So just by that, I could go back and check, but I probably think I peaked around 100K.
yeah,
I would say
yeah.
at that time.
Mm.
Yeah. Mhm.
And then you start moving towards this goal that was a sub 3 marathon. What changed in your training and your, I guess, also your approach to running when aiming for that?
The sub three is I think I do kind of better training now, but when I look back, that's still one of my favorites, just because it was ridiculously simple. It was I kept the long run, and then I added one interval, but the interval started out at like 10 by 1,000. No, I think it was 8 by 1,000, 90-second rest. I did that for like 2 weeks. Then I did 10 by 1,000. Did that for a couple weeks. Then 12, and 14, and then I just kept it like that for 2 weeks, and then I upped it by 2. And I did that, and I think I worked from like 8, and then the final 2 weeks, which is I don't do those workouts now even, but that was like a 20 by 1,000.
Oh wow.
So, so then there's nothing changed. Like still the 90-second rest, and that was pretty much I just did that week to week. So it was extremely structured in terms of the intervals, and I didn't kind of experiment with anything. I just did that. So when I look back on it, I was like, why? But like now I have a lot of fun, trying some new things. But that worked, and then you really measure like progression, right? Because you see it. I've added 2 more now, but the pace is the same. So it's a great
Mhm.
sign, right? And then I guess so that was like the biggest change without a doubt. And then also the long run was also quite an interesting approach there. I just did like a kind of similar principles. I think I started off at like you do, and then obviously the goal pace was sub 3, so that's like 650 a mile, 415 per k. So then would like 5K easy, 5K at that pace, and I did that 3 times. Then maybe the easy one, and then 2 weeks later, then you do 4 easy, and then 6 at that pace 3 times, and then 3.7, and then 2.8. And I think I peaked at 2.8. I didn't go kind of 1.9 because I think that would have been a bit of an effort. But again, very kind of easy principles. Probably up that after 2 weeks, kind of thing.
Yeah. Wow. And the intensity for you on those 20 by K, you did mention like obviously it's 415, 650 pace for the long run workouts. Did you have the same pace for the Ks?
I, I think I probably land at about I guess what do you call them? What we call fire blank. That's 4
Mhm.
minute per k.
Yeah.
Was that? It's probably 6:30, something in that
Hmm.
region, something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. Yeah, so probably around there. It does vary, right? But I did do like the 90-second rest, walk rest. So I usually now do a minute. But at that time, 90, you recover quite well. So which I think was smart when I look back at it.
But when you're talking about this, you, I'm sure that you had some time between the marathon and starting to build again for the next marathon. Maybe not that much, but still, if we look at that 322 marathon, like you said, it's around 445 pace, and you're lowering then that pace like with 30 to 45 seconds for obviously your race, but also for your workouts. And so did you gradually improve that pace, or did you just like, okay, 259 is my next goal, then
No,
I'm gonna
no.
target this pace?
it's definitely a gradual process because now at that point, right, you're a bit interested into things. You do some research, and then I did have like these. There were two Brooklyn half marathons, and then
Yeah.
so I did both of those, and for the second one of those, which is around May, like mid-May, then then I went for like sub 130, right? So that's which I was I tried on the first one, but I came up short, and then I tried again on the second, and I got on the 129. So obviously, if you do 129 half, then I mean, you've at least you can keep the sub 3 pace for at least half the distance, right? So
Yeah.
then it's just about doubling it, right? But so I probably did do some tweaks between that period, right? Probably then I did experiment with some speed, whether that was the deciding factor, I don't know. But but yeah, those hacks probably helped a bit, especially for the confidence part of it. You've done the 129 at least. You're parts of
Yeah.
the way there.
But at some point here, you must have realized that, wow, I do have a talent for this, because it sounds like, based on everything you say, it sounds like you were very smart about your training, but that doesn't mean that you will have that kind of progress, because that's kind of unheard of in a lot of ways. So did you do you talked about your grandfather, but it's like, do you come from a very athletic family? Do you have Did you know beforehand that you had the genes to be able to do something like this?
Uh, it's a very good question. It's just like a very standard Norwegian upbringing, I would say. You play a lot of soccer, so I guess you your body kind of is adapted to at least some level of effort, right? So that definitely helps. Cross country skiing has probably helped. I've never been at a high level, right? But it's something I've been doing all my life, and I don't know, maybe I have, I do have. So I did operate my uh, was it ACL and meniscus at some point. This is like COVID times, but I do remember the doctor when he operated there. I don't know the English term. Was the brusk.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
yeah, no.
I have no idea.
Uh,
It's one of the parts in the knees, at least. It's not the meniscus, and is at least. But he told me that I have great brusk.
okay, yeah, so you
So,
got some compliments from the
yeah.
doctor.
So I guess that's gotta count for something, right? So maybe that's helped. And I suppose that's genetics. So maybe that has helped. But
hmm
no, nothing. I mean, no, what my grandfather did, that's obviously amazing, but he also did it over quite a few years. So I suppose there's something there, but I would say nothing out of the ordinary. Very standard Norwegian upbringing, I'd say.
Yeah. And then when you talk about your training, it also, you first of all, you sound like you're very much aware of everything that you're doing. There's like no coincidence that you are doing what you're doing. Uh, did you have, or do you have a coach that helped you, or are you self-coached?
It's all self coached. So I have spent my fair few hours, listening to running podcasts. So some of it there, and then you do some research on the side. But just to caveat that, though, I mean, I have some ideas in my head, right? But I make mistakes all the time there, right? Sometimes you put maybe load on the volumes too much. You push certain workouts a bit too much. So I'm still learning there as well, and it's very rare that I hit it perfectly. But I think over the course of, let's just say, a marathon block, I'm gonna hit quite a few weeks pretty on point, and then there's gonna be the occasional where you make mistakes. And to kind of the coach question, I would never hire one, to be honest, just because I don't see myself at kind of at that level. That would definitely help. Like if I got the help, it would definitely be needed because I know there are tweaks that can be done to improve. But I try to err on the side of caution in many cases, right? So I'm not. I know that if I have a long run, for example, I need to take it easy on the Friday, and I should take it easy on the Sunday and the Monday. I can still
hmm
run, but it doesn't have to be hard. So I'm very conscious of uh, especially after big workouts, that you don't get greedy.
Yeah, but yes, and I totally understand the caution part. Like, being cautious is really smart. Uh, but you also must, like, What was your mileage like when you were able to do like 20 by K at the end of this marathon block? Because then 20 by K and also 30K long runs, it's just like 50 kilometers, 30 miles just there.
Yeah, so I think I think those peak weeks there probably must have pushed up towards maybe 110, 120. I
Hmm.
think that will be realistic at the time. Yeah, I think. But even at that point, I was still able to kind of cope with that volume. Of course, you feel it the day after 20 by K, right? It's not like you don't spring out of bed, but still, one day and then maybe the next day, then you can go back to it.
Yeah. And can you describe that feeling of running that sub 3 marathon? Because then that was within a year, was it?
Yes, yeah. So this was 322 was April, and then this would have been September. Yeah, so 5 months. So that was
Five
no
months,
that.
but one
Yeah,
1 year after your
yeah,
424
yeah,
then.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. That was a massive improvement over the course of a year, but that was great. Sub three is that's the first thing you look for, right? When you start doing this, you start dreaming of the sub three. That's it's always going to be the big one, right? So no, that was massive. Had a Just a decent day out there as well. Pretty flat course. Southampton, you run along the coast, so it's basically it's flat. Some winds, right? Because you're out on the coast, but no, good race. I'd love to do it again, to be honest. Um, yeah, I had started out a bit too hot probably, and then but I knew kind of I was safe on this time, so I was able to control it the last 5K.
Yeah. And you ended up with 2:59.
Yes, on the dot.
Yeah. Wow. Awesome. So I'm sure like your motivation and that your grandpa's like time you had that it seemed more realistic. How much did you change when heading into that next block?
Yep, quite a I'd say quite a bit actually, because now, as I said, I'd only been doing 1K reps, right? So also just kind of for the mental part of it, it was fun to do something different. So you just start doing, more maybe like minute oriented uh, reps, went on the track a bit more, maybe stuff like that. So I tried a lot of different things, but still kept the structure of the Saturday and the long run. But definitely did try to do more speed work. Yeah. And more
Yeah.
more varied than before. I didn't do much of it. I do more now, but I threw in maybe some 400s just to try that as well. Yeah.
And what about strength training, cross training? Did you do any of that or did you just run?
No, I guess that's the no. The last time I think I held a weight bar because I did actually do some strength training up until the sub three, and I
Hmm.
remember I'd heard 3 weeks out from a marathon you should stop strength training, and I still remember I think the last time I ever did a bench press was 3 weeks out from the sub three. So I should do more of it, and I know it probably helps, but the body's handling it okay.
Yeah.
Never really had any injury scares or anything, so no knock on wood that continues. But I'm 28 now, so I in my mind I'm like when I get a bit into my 30s, I think I need to start incorporating the strength training.
Hmm.
So that's there, but where I'm at right now, I'm not doing
No.
anything. Might regret it at a later point, but for the time being, at
Your
least, I'm
body will let you know when it needs it. So don't you worry.
yeah.
Uh, so what was your mileage at before that 246 marathon block?
Yeah, so that's when I kind of really got going with the mileage. I think I peaked at 100 miles just to be fun to
Yeah.
check that box.
Hmm.
But very gradual. So if you were to look at my Strava graphs during that build, it's just a straight line. To be honest, it's very none of the, I didn't really have like a percentage rule or whatever, but it was more kind of it did. Let's say it is 130K. Next week, let's do 134,
Yeah.
and then kind of just like I always did a bit more than the week before, so you got a nice progression, and I knew I wanted to finish up at 100 miles just to
Mhm.
say I did it. So that was also the first time with faced with big volume, and again worked fine. The body handled it. Of course, you're sore at times, but steady increase. That'll
Yeah.
helped a lot.
And how did your easy runs change? Because, like you said, you added some more speed work and you had your repeats, and I'm sure that the pace kind of just kept up with your progress. But in terms of your easy runs, did you also run them faster, or did you still stay true to the very easy pace?
I think I stayed pretty true to that. Most my easy ones are kind of miles. So then it's really, you're tired, you get up and then you just go out the door kind of thing. So I'm never really concerned about the pace. At one point, I actually did. I think that was during that block. I turned up the auto lap on
Yeah.
the on the watch just because that keeps you quite aware of what you're actually running. So turn that off. Haven't turned it back on since. So I think at the time I probably ended up somewhere 5:15 to 5:30. Uh,
Yeah.
if I was tired, and I have no problem kind of pushing that towards 6 minutes on the K either.
Mhm.
It depends. Like the day after a big interval, that's the morning session. Then it's probably going to be extremely slow,
Yeah.
and I'm perfectly fine with that.
Sounds like that might be the key to your success.
I hope so. But I think that's big. The whole commuting thing, that it helps so much.
Yeah.
You do that. You have to get to work some way or another, right? So that it saves a lot of time. So I think that's been really. I'm kind of fortunate enough to live close enough to the office that I actually can do that. That's good.
But did you start using heart rate at any point during during your
Yeah,
training?
yeah. I did get one for the 246 build. Used it a bit. I think it's interesting just to see. Not using it right now. I remember at one of the during the summer, it kind of started annoying me a bit. I felt it was like tightening on my chest. So then I stopped using it, and that felt better. So I haven't
Hmm.
actually gone back to it yet. So I haven't used it for the past 6 months. But I do think it's a good data point. But feel is probably more important.
Yeah.
But I think I should use it more because it's a good data point.
Hmm. Ah, cool. So you got to the 246, you added some more speed work, some track, some 400s here and there. And then you beat your grandpa's time. You said that was like
That
nothing's
was a big
gonna
one.
beat.
That was
Yeah,
no.
nothing's gonna beat that.
I could run a 220 and still wouldn't be close.
Yeah, wow.
So
So going from there, like, did you change a lot? Because now we are, I guess, the fall of 2025. So now we're just like a few months back, where you
yes,
did
yes.
that 242 marathon, but 245 first and then 242. Uh, What changes, or if you made any, did you make for that?
So I upped the mileage more. So I think I did. I was looking through it the other day. So I think for that 245 build, at least I think I had 500-mile plus weeks. Actually peaked at 180K, 184K, which is I don't think I'm ever
Wow.
doing that. Not ever doing that again. But it was interesting just to see. So mileage upped quite significantly. And even the weeks I wasn't at 100 miles, I was still like in the 150s, right? So of those case, so it was close. I did tried to make the Tuesday. I sometimes did doubles there, so I would do like me and a couple of guys from work. We do like a Tuesday morning interval session, and then I would also do that. Would typically be like could be anything from like 2 minutes to 6 minutes, the kind of that. So that's like 500 meters to like up towards 2K reps, and then we did a lot of that. And then in the evening, I would maybe do like a 2 minutes on, 1 minute off, 20 of those maybe. So that made like the Tuesday very big. So you get a lot of work done there. So then I definitely need the Wednesday and then Thursday and the Friday and to kind of cool down a bit. But I still did a lot of easy miles during those days. And then of course the long run stayed pretty much the same. I've tried like alternating weeks, 1 week steady pace, slightly progressive, and then the other week I'll do like an on-off sort of solution. That can be 4x5Ks, 3x7s, can be 2K on, 1K off. I've varied quite a bit there, but that's kind of the structure that I followed there. And I did try at one point to go like a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday solution, but I think I didn't really I didn't allow myself enough rest in between, so that if I did that, one of those workouts would suffer, to put it
Yeah.
that way. So I've kind of come to terms with now that I can do that, but then I need to have the Tuesday and the Thursdays to be quite low volume, but it can still be hard, but it'd be low volume, and certainly no double days.
Hmm. And the long run, that seems like to have been, even when we look back to the fall of 2023, you were saying that you did 30K runs, 19 miles. It sounds like that has been something that's been just the same. And then you obviously you peaked at some of the longer runs. But have you, like, if you look at all the marathon blocks that you've done so far, is it like around 19 miles, 30K every time?
Uh,
And then you have
no,
some that are longer?
I've upped it quite a bit. So I think I've in all the blocks. I'm actually not going to do it this time, but I've the 3 past ones at least. I've always peaked at 40K just to kind of build it up to that. So but most of them has been in like the 34 to 38. So what is that in like 21, 24-ish miles, kind of that region.
Yeah.
Most of them have been in that space, but to your point, yes, that's always been the constant. So obviously wasn't that in the first block, but eventually it's always been like that. The long run is the most important of the week.
Yeah. Okay, so here you are, 242 marathoner, 2 years, and you went from that 424. I keep repeating myself, but I'm just, yeah, I'm just amazed by this. So what is like your when you look at your running going forward? What is your goal? Do you have like a long-term goal for your running in terms of times?
Not really. You always want to improve, right? So now the first one is Boston. So that will be. I haven't really set. I think I heard you mention the other day 238. I think I might be going for something very similar.
Yeah,
So
cool.
so we might see each
We
other
can
out
run
there.
together.
So
Yeah,
yeah. So no. So I think, to be honest, like at some point I thought, like, when I started realizing I'll be doing Boston and Chicago this year, that you do 235 in Boston and do 230 Chicago. But I think I was banking on some progression in the last block that never materialized there. So I've had to damper my expectations a bit there. I'm still gonna do the work and see where it takes me, but I think that's a bit too optimistic at this point in time.
yeah,
But of course, if I'm able to keep the consistency, 230 is or 229.59 is extremely tempting, but I just it's not something I have to do, to put it that way.
hmm
It's but yeah, I want to improve every time, right? So if we say 238 Boston, then maybe you go sub 235 in Chicago. That could be a decent lineup.
yeah. But hearing you talk about your running so far, they're like I have two thoughts, and one of them is like, well, how fast can he actually run if he's able to do this within 2 years? But then the other part is like, at some point, because just like realistically speaking, it has to stop. Not in terms of like never having any progress, but as of right now, you've gone from like 424 to 322 to 259, 246, 242. It's like quite a lot of progress, more progress than most people can expect for every or each marathon that they're doing. Are you kind of just, or are you expecting or ready for that race when you're not going to have that kind of?
Yes, yes, yes. And I kind of just life situation, right? Like right now, we got the one kid, right, and it's got a very, I say, patient wife as well. So kind of, so I get to do a lot of this. I get to do a lot of miles in a week, and that. But and I also understand life, right? So at some point, there might be a second kid, right? So at that point, you're not going to be able to hit these miles. So I have this thought in my head that the race Chicago 2026 might just be my best ever
Yeah,
race.
yeah,
That's I think that's a very realistic scenario, to put it that way. It doesn't have to be, right? But that's also why I it's important to me that I do the work in 2026. I kind of stay injury free, do what I can, check off a good box there, and that might just end up as the PB.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fine with going backwards from there.
I love that attitude. It's great. But what you said there is also something that I was thinking about, because I think it's easy for all of us to just we hear these stories about people running as fast as you are, or maybe even more importantly, how much you've been running, because like the mileage that you've been up at, it's we're talking a lot of hours every week, and you have a kid, you have a wife, you have a full-time job. How are you able to balance all of this?
Again, patient wife. Yeah, but it's a lot of commuting. That's honestly that's big, and then you have to maybe wake up a bit early at times. Like today, up a bit early to get some miles in before the kid wakes up, etc. Stuff like that. So, and you obviously need to prioritize. Make some, doesn't necessarily running might just be being a parent as well, right? But you say no to kind of more, how do you say, weekend activities, to put it that way, right? You're
Yeah.
less, you have to say no to things. So that does free up some time, right? And there. So you just have to prioritize, to me, family, work, running, those are three very important things. And then I just want to keep those ones in balance. And then anything else I can always say no to, kind of thing, right? I
Yeah.
still enjoy it, right? But at times I can always say no to that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's important, if you start saying yes to too many of those, then one of those other three ones go out of balance, right? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so impressed, and you did mention your 2026 coming up, and it sounds like your wife needs to keep being patient, but uh, so you are doing the Boston, Chicago, and New York this year, and before we started chatting, you were talking about that you do, based on being in all of those races, you have some knowledge on how to get into the American majors, and uh, it's kind of an open question just based on the things that you wrote to me beforehand. What are your thoughts or your secret to getting in Boston? Obviously, you're fast enough, but with the other ones,
They are, I think they are similar, and at the end of the day, it does help to have run some fast times. Let's put it that way, right? But there are similarities across all three, right? I think all of them have some time qualifying. I think they're more obvious maybe with Boston and Chicago. At least my age, I guess males up to 30, 34. If you're 250, or I guess just under 250, you're pretty much in, right? So that's what I've done for those two, right? But both of those also have, I guess Boston's probably the hardest, right? Because you just have to qualify. I have looked into, just because I was curious, right? I've done most of my research on New York, to be honest, but like all of them have, like, you can always do if you want to pay, there's always an option, right? You can always do, or if you want to raise money for charity, there's always an option. But I think Boston's probably the hardest, right, with the time qualifying. Chicago is also interesting. Again, similar time, but apparently the drawing there, the Rikers, New York and Chicago, you have drawings. I've tried every year. Chicago, I never got in. So,
mm-hmm.
but apparently the odds of getting in are better. The success rates. I hadn't personally experienced that, but better than New York, at least. New York's what, about 3%. Probably
Yeah,
less now with this getting even more popular. So we're a bunch of people here in the office that try every time, right? But none of us ever get in. So I haven't seen much of that. So Chicago is probably best with the time. It's also got charity entries a bit easier there, probably, than I think Boston's the worst when it comes to charity, but not the worst. I mean, you're doing good work, but most
yeah,
difficult.
yeah,
Right. I think that one's what I've heard is like close to 10K you need to raise in many cases. Whereas I think
yeah.
Chicago, you can get by like maybe $2,500. Still a lot of money, but needs to be raised. And New York is what, somewhere between like 3 to 5K in most cases,
Mm-hmm.
for the fundraiser. So those are equal across. New York is obviously right. If you're local, and you might have like the 9+1 program with the New York Roadrunners organization, they host so many races throughout the year. Without having the specifics, I'd say it's like 30, 40 races, and if you do 9 of those and volunteer in one, then you're automatically qualified. So that's the most common, but that's of course limited to well, it doesn't have to be, but local New Yorkers that are able to actually show up for the races. The biggest one there, though, which was my plan, that actually didn't happen, but you can do kind of the New York Roadrunners, their half marathons. You can qualify through there. So at least for my they have like, I think they have 4 for everyone, and then 5 if you include, they have like women's only half marathon as well. And if you hit sub 121 in one of those, then you're in. And
Okay.
that's only there's obviously different age groups and genders, etc. But I think that's probably the most straightforward, unless you want to do the 9+1 series.
Yeah. And then for you this year, like I said, or like you said too, that you qualified for Boston, so you're in with your time. And Chicago, was that also time?
That was also time, yeah, sub
Yeah.
250. So that
Mm-hmm.
was good. Then
And then New York.
I was
Yeah,
planning
sorry.
to do a sub 121 at a Staten Island half in October, which you still had to do it, but I think I could have done that. But that one got cancelled.
Oh, okay.
so that put a dent in that plan. But then I figured I'd do something good. So I'm currently doing the cherry entry for New York this year. So
Yeah.
that was always kind of
Tell me more about that.
I did kind of, I'd say, call it a standard route, but New York Roadrunners are massive organization. They have their main partner. It's the New York Roadrunners Team for Kids. They do a lot of good stuff. They fund the doing this for like 20+ years. They're funding all sorts of community programs, set up races, provide opportunities for not mostly New York, of course, like kind of for young athletes in New York, making it in the US. There's a lot of barriers, I'd say, to sports, right? But they set up a lot of free opportunities, after school programs. They're partnered with schools, just kind of to get. It doesn't have to be running, but all sorts of athletic programs to youth. So I'm teaming up with them. So I have a fundraiser there. So I mentioned it to you that I'd also like to mention that on this podcast. So if
Yeah.
anyone wants to support a good cause, I'm raising money for them. So great mission, a mission I can fully support, and getting young athletes out, giving them the opportunity to stay active. So something that I believe in, and that's one of the reasons I teamed up with them.
Yeah. And I'll add all of those links that you have or that people need in the show notes. So yeah, good cause. And yeah, this is a very good thing. I think that a lot of us, especially for you and me growing up in Norway, we take a lot of those things for granted because we have those activities, like such easy access to it, right? Like, and it doesn't cost a fortune, and most of it is free. Honestly, like we're so lucky and fortunate. So it's a nice cause to support.
Agree 100%. And one thing that I forgot to mention, and just one thing with New York is, you have you can qualify through the New York Roadrunners races, right? But there is a time there, but it's kind of like a, what do you say, a catch-22 is like you can run a 2:53 at the New York Marathon to get in. I think then you have to be in the
Okay.
actual race.
Yeah.
So that's one. But the other one is you can also, they do have this 2:53 limit, but there's a very aggressive cutoff to it.
Mm.
So I think last year was like 13 minutes. So you effectively had to run a sub. This is again my age group, sub 240 basically to get in. But there
Yeah.
is that option. It varies across age groups. It varies year to year, but that one's of course a lot stricter than Boston and Chicago. But if you're running in the 230s, then you'll probably get in without having to do maybe a New York Roadrunners half or any of the other options.
Yeah, because I think this is where a lot of people are a bit confused when you talk about Boston being the hardest one to get into, right? Because that's what we're talking about. That's what we're saying, and that is true because you have to qualify for Boston to even run it. But then with New York, the cutoff time is so much harder with New York. So that's I guess where the difference comes in. So yeah,
Agree 100%.
I
I just, as someone wants my room here.
yeah, I know that you're leaving. We were just ending this. Just like the very last question: how is your training going for Boston? Are you ready?
Very good. I'm starting the first long run in 2 weeks. I've so we're getting there shortly. It'll be good, and hope to see you out there on the
Awesome,
238
yeah.
train.
Definitely. Hey, Odin, thank you so much for coming on. Good luck with the rest of your day. I see that you're at work, so yeah, thank you again, and good luck.
Thank you so much. Pleasure meeting you.
You too.
Yes.
I was sitting there and I kept saying, wow, wow, wow. And just very, very impressed with the progress that he had and the way his approach running. We had to end the call pretty quickly there because he was at work and someone needed that meeting room. But I feel like we got most of the answers that we were looking for. So thank you, Odin, for coming on. Again, we'll link the fundraiser down in the show notes, and I hope that people will support Odin in and his running going forward. Thank you so much for listening to the Marathon Podcast. Please give this podcast a review, and remember that you can buy the marathon hat on themarathonpodcast.com and get 20% off an annual subscription with Strava by using the code Kristian. You can see how that is spelled down in the show notes. You listen to the Marathon Podcast, brought to you by Walt Studio.